Brought to you by PrayLatin.com, makers of prayer cards featuring complete English phonetic renderings of Latin pronunciations.
It is time to talk about appointments to open seas, high-profile ones. There is a chance to stop this from happening. This is not a foregone conclusion. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes down the way it looks like it's going to go down, and that's this. The Archdiocese of Vienna has an opening for an ordinary. Cardinal Shawnee retired some time ago, and his see has been open. There is an administrator, generally a priest, running the diocese, which is normal until a new bishop is announced. And the name that has been leaked from Austria, kind of like how in Charlotte, somebody leaked a bunch of documents to warn everybody about what was going on with the Latin Mass there. A name has been leaked from Austria, that the name is the worst possible bishop who could get this appointment, that the Holy Father is literally looking to put the worst possible bishop there. And this cannot be written off as he doesn't know anything about him. Because remember, before Cardinal Robert Prevost was elected Pope Leo XIV, he was the prefect for the dicastery of the bishops. He knew who they were. He was one who would look at priests who were on their way to being bishops and submit their names as recommendations. He would vet them. He was one who would do the same for bishops who were looking to become archbishops. He was involved in the process of promoting Cardinal Robert McElroy, for example. Whether his recommendations were for or against Robert McElroy, I don't know. But this is possibly the worst possible bishops. We're going to go here to Cathcon. We're going to be spending a lot of time on their blog site because, as you'll see, they have been doing the research on this. Headline: Pope delays announcement of Schönborn's successor in Vienna. Bishop Glettler being considered for the job. And now have here for you a disclaimer. I never really give trigger warnings on this channel because I think those things are in general silly. We as Catholics should be ready to talk about sin in as naked of terms as we can and play within the rules of that our host set. They have rules. We agree to use their platform. We have to follow their rules as best we can. Doesn't mean we can't talk about certain things. We have to be careful how we do it. However, in this case, I will do my best to not put images on screen, except sometimes they're just sprinkled throughout the articles we're going to go over. For the squeamish and faint of heart, you might want to be advised. I don't want to get hate mail from people after I give you that warning, because this is a bishop I have covered in the past. During Lent, the devil likes to play. He likes to whisper in the ears of those who seem in the hierarchy, who seem to be in his grasp already, to get them to profane sacred things. And in Austria, Bishop Glettler has a track record going back like 20 years to profaning sacred things. Every few years, he decides to put in his cathedrals art of a James Martin variety, we'll say, or art that, and we'll use art here in quotes, or art that denigrates and dehumanizes our blessed Lord in the most gross way possible. That is your warning. I will not be upset with you if you say, maybe this episode's not for me. This is the man who is looking to be promoted by the Pope. The leaks in Charlotte tell us that, and the result of everything is that your resistance to this, your voicing your displeasure with this, you making a noise about this, can stop things from happening. Take that into consideration here. And yes, pray for Leo to make a good choice here. This is the worst possible decision that he could possibly make. And we're going to go over this now. That was your fair warning. From the article, quote, Pope Leo XIV has been appointing new bishops worldwide since taking office, but the Archdiocese of Vienna will likely have to wait a little longer. Cardinal Christoph Schönborn has been retired as Archbishop since mid-January. but a decision on a successor is still pending. According to APA Information, that's a news service in Europe, the Archdiocese of Vienna does not expect a decision before the summer, which is like 3 weeks from now. The Archdiocese is currently headed by the Vatican-appointed Apostolic Administrator Josef Grunwald. After Grunwald's appointment, church circles had actually assumed that a new archbishop would be appointed within 6 weeks. However, the decision-making process in the Vatican was delayed, not least due to the death of Pope Francis. Innsbruck diocesan bishop Hermann Glettler is being discussed as a possible new archbishop. However, as often the case, surprises during the search are easily possible. And that is where I remind you that prayers and making your voice heard on this may avert a horrible appointment, especially to Vienna, an iconic diocese that has a little problem. And that is that the diocese and priests there love the James Martin crowd, and they use their parishes and things to put on festivals for them. And Schönborn was iffy on the issue, but he did at times stand up and say no to them. Let's continue. He gives you a suggestion here. Here, see, Bishop Glettler finds good work in the Blood Orgy Master, among other stories on Cathcon dating back years. So let's give you an idea here first about Vienna before we go into Bishop Glettler's background. Because Vienna would be, it's a Cardinal Schönborn comes from Vienna. Cardinal Schönborn. I'm going to emphasize the word again. Cardinal. That means a bishop of Vienna isn't necessarily going to become a cardinal at a next conclave, but it certainly looks like that could be the case. Vienna has a history of things. Date here, December 2nd, 2019. Headline from Ro.News, one of the services, one of the European news services that uses Gloria TV. Vienna, Vigano condemns sinister James Martin-style concert in cathedral. This was the Vienna Cathedral. The details from this article to show you why Vienna is so important in this. Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano denounced a James Martin-type concert in the Vienna Cathedral. The event was initiated, opened, and closed by Cardinal Christoph Schönborn, who has a history of James Martin-type sentimental complications. In a message to Pachamama dunker Alexander Schugel, Vigano wrote that this was, quote, another James Martin type and blasphemous provocation. For Vigano, the event represents the sinister vision of a church that wants to rebuild itself against the faith and against the truth of the human person. Vigano wrote to Schugel because he organized a rosary outside the cathedral. And I'm not going to play, I mean, this is the rosary. There's Alexander Schugel there. That's not the important part of the story. That gives you a little bit of context. But this goes back many years. For most of us, would be considered many years. And so, to give you an idea how bad Vienna is, this is the Independent, okay? The Independent from the UK. We're not talking here about, a life site, Info Vaticana, these kind of Catholic websites that get criticized for having a bent, okay? The Independent. Headline, Alfred Herdlich, artist who outraged Catholic groups with his James Martin-type depiction of the Last Supper, dated Friday, the 18th of December, 2009. And this artist, his antics go back to 2004, at least. All right? He depicted in the Cathedral of Vienna James Martin-type artwork. Cardinal Schönborn had to intervene eventually. Vienna is a hotbed for this stuff. That is why we now go back to Catholic Conclave. I'm going to just show you how many stories they have of Bishop Glettler. Some of the images here will be less than appealing. We'll go through them quickly. But, Pope Denazel, that's from the article that I just read. There's Bishop and one of the priests of the Crescent Moon religion co-author a book about hope from earlier this year. We'll talk about that in a moment. Modern art put up in his cathedral. A blatantly satanic modern art. If this was in a I don't know, Lady Gaga music video, you just go, yeah, that figures, that tracks. This is a cathedral. Bishop concerned with crisis in the Catholic faith, very concerned with refugee and environmental stuff. And we'll go to that story in a minute. But here, let's start with his theology. Bishop Glettler's theology from CathCon. 2023, Bishop unconcerned with crisis in the Catholic faith, but very concerned with refugee environmental crises. He's far more in solidarity with the thermometer stuff than he is with the faith. There he is, waxing eloquently about something that probably has little to do with the faith. In view of the current crises, namely the thermometer and refugee ones, Bishop Hermann Glettler of Innsbruck pleads for action and solidarity. Neither repressing or whitewashing, nor a negative, hysterical overreaction in the face of these facts makes sense, the bishop said in his sermon at the rededication of the monastery in Ried Oberntal on Sunday. The severe events of the summer, for example, can no longer be ignored as real warnings, the bishop emphasized. Pope Francis had already published his concern for the common home in the form of his environmental encyclical Laudato Si in 2015. This concern that we all together still manage and a turnaround of our common home and time has the highest priority for our reflection, effective action, and prayer, he said. Let's repeat that. He says the concern we all together still manage and a turnaround on the state of creation in time has the highest priority for our reflection. Highest priority for your reflection. Let me repeat that. He thanks care for your common home, as Francis calls it, for the earth, is your highest spiritual reflection purpose. That takes greater priority than the salvation of souls. Future Archbishop, possibly future Cardinal of Vienna, unless people stop this. Okay, that's who we're talking about here. But this gets back to, let's get back to blasphemy. Because at the end of the day, we're not here, we're not as concerned here in the immediate with just this silliness, because as I'm going to show you this weekend, Pope Leo XIV is all in on the powers that be and their creation of a better world. As I'm going to demonstrate, he endorsed Agenda 2030. He did. And I've got the receipts for it, and I'll go over that tomorrow probably. From 2023, headline from Catholic Conclave. Bishops stay silent when questioned about his lavish funding of modern art. Modern art is not art, not for the most part. And here's going to be the first image that when I describe it to you, you're going to be very upset at me. Here's your chance to turn away. From the article. The construction and dismantling of the projects in the 3 Innsbruck churches alone, including the Lenten cloth with a pig's heart depicted on it, reportedly cost around 15,000 euros. What you're seeing there is an image of a pig's heart placed in a condom, and the bishop described it as, placed this in this cathedral and said it was an image of the Sacred Heart. And now we get rid of that off your screen. Bishop Glettler, ladies and gentlemen, the possible future Cardinal Archbishop of Vienna, unless people say no and beg the Holy Father to reconsider. It doesn't get much better, though. It's headline from Catholic Conclave. Former Church of St. Agnes in Berlin, now venue for Mickey Mouse and depictions of a James Martin-type Jesus. I'm going to show you that one, that image. There's, we'll say Disney is very protective of its copyright. I can show you this legally because it's about commentary on a news item. But Disney is very protective of its copyrights, notoriously so. And I'm actually one who thinks that copyright should be protected. And in this case, I kind of wish Disney had found out about this and issued a cease and desist order with the German courts. That would have been nice. We're going to scroll through this. That's actually a church. I know you might be thinking that looks like a prison, right? Sort of East German prison. No, that's a church. There's a crucifix. St. Agnes Church. So here, let's go to the details. Originally, St. Agnes Church belonged to the Catholic parish, which released the building for rent in September 2004 for financial reasons. The number of parishioners had dropped dramatically. Some furnishings from the church room, such as the altar and pews, have been moved to St. Boniface Church. Because there was no money to maintain and renovate the buildings, building experts felt that the preservation of the church ensemble was at risk. In 2005, the Berlin State Monument Council therefore had the St. Agnes Church, along with 8 other churches, included in a list of proposed new monuments. From 2005 to 2011, the City Church of Berlin, led by the Free Church preacher Volkard Spitzer, temporarily used the building. After the Catholic Church gave up using the building ensemble, new usage concepts were developed on behalf of that district council. I'm not going to trip over that one, which were intended to lead to a structural renovation of the church. After the gallery owner Johann Koenig, who at that time had already been running an art gallery in Berlin city center for several years, was made aware of the ensemble. He leased the church building in 2012 for 99 years. It's now called the Koenig Gallery. Instead of being used for mass, it is used for art fairs. It has busy exhibition programs. Where once hung the cross, now hangs Mickey Mouse, and much that is shocking. I'm going to stop showing the screen for this next one. It depicts Christ on the cross, but his face is to the wood of the cross, and his bare backside is exposed. It is described as a James Martin-esque kind of contemplation. And so I'm just going to skip that one. And he also has another one of a very similar kind of depiction of Jesus staring at the cross. It's called Ecce Homo. He's staring at a frog that is on a crucifix. Yeah. Let's get this back on screen now, because this is where it gets important for our depiction. It said Bishop Glettler liked the work so much that he brought it to Innsbruck. As a military-industrial complex which has caused so much concern to Eisenhower in the 50s, there's a modern art ecclesiastical modernism complex which continues to wound the Catholic Church on a daily basis. Rupnik is exhibit A of this, but he brought this bizarre-looking Christ staring at that horrifying image, and this is the man that is being considered by the Holy Father to lead a diocese that has a long, long track record of having problems of a James Martin variety. More recently, bishop and preacher for the Crescent Moon Religion and its False Prophet, co-author a book about hope. So here we go, ecumenical dialogue. Dialogue book, Don't Choose Hate, Choose Love, aims to send a signal against the new harshness in our society. Chapter with impulses for action for a non-prejudiced approach to one another. Oh, isn't that nice? Just surrender truth. Don't worry about the salvation of souls. That's so pre-Vatican II. Just make a better world. Kumbaya. In their joint book, Don't Choose Hate, Choose Love, Innsbruck Bishop Hermann Glettler and their false teacher have set out to search for traces of hope in a wounded society. The two are worlds apart, the forward states. Yada, yada, yada. It's a document of friendship and aims to be a small sign against the new harshness in our society and to inspire true humanity. The two write at the beginning. I have a counter argument. It's not a hard one. If you want true humanity, it's not going to be by sacrificing truth and embracing lukewarmness and kumbaya. It's going to be through Christ. That is the only path to universal human fraternity, to borrow their language, is submission to Jesus Christ, recognition of his kingship, and actually striving to be saints, and evangelization and all the rest of the things that are so out of fashion today. This is the bishop who might be the next Cardinal Archbishop of Vienna. And it's utterly astonishing. So we go here, more on this. So again, Catholic who have been doing the yeoman's work here, very heroic work of documenting Bishop Glettler, one of the most just mind-bogglingly bad bishops in the church. Bishop defends indefensible modern art. The theologian who objects concerned he is branded as an extremist. Evil, in only that way, the things that are not beautiful and being hung in a place that they shouldn't be, art that has no business in a cathedral or at an altar. I mean, look at this. Classic Catholic artwork, stained glass, statues, all of it. I mean, icons, everything. And then this. It's astonishing. Like, the bishop is, see Bishop First Goods in the work of, the bishop's a modern tribute act to the most decadent of Renaissance popes. What's the matter? Provocation is not criterion. It's about liveliness, depth, breadth, and existential relevance. I know that high-quality art always creates frictional energy, but also that provocation for its own sake is ridiculous. Equally unfavorable is the knee-jerk judgment that everything that does not correspond to one's own taste is provocative or even blasphemous. Yada, yada, yada. That is their response. This is a bishop who shouldn't be, he should be running an art gallery somewhere. Going to those James Martin parties that he probably already goes to anyway, and just living that kind of a life. Instead of being a bishop who is going to be possibly made a cardinal. Again, Catholic Conclave headline, Bishop finds good work in the Blood Orgy Master, claims it is alternative to desensualized modern Catholic liturgy. Innsbruck Bishop, if high-quality art provokes, then that's how it has to be. Art, in any form, is supposed to make you think. It's supposed to, in one of the things, anyway, at least when it comes to anything that belongs in a parish or in sacred spaces, it's supposed to make you turn your mind and your heart and your soul towards higher things. And that is in a parish. I don't even know what that is. When you look at this, it's diabolical looking. It's right up there with that statue in the Paul VI Audience Hall. Bishop Hermann Glettler pleads for less outrage and debates about contemporary art in the church. Provocation for its own sake is intolerable, says the man who had a crucified frog statue in his cathedral. However, if high-quality art provokes, then that's how it has to be, said Glettler to a German outlet whose name I'm not going to trip over. Old and new art can gather people from distraction and touch them deeply. Accordingly, the Innsbruck bishop appeals for hospitality for contemporary art in churches, but also for rediscovering the power and beauty of older church art. Glettler noted that engaging with the culture of our time could prepare the ground for the church's most important cultural work, proclamation of the gospel. It's a constant translation process. In discussions about hurting religious feelings, believers should not allow themselves to be pushed too quickly into the corner of those who are offended, said Glettler in the longer interview. Good communication is particularly important in the regularly recurring debate about the cross. We must try to explain the meaning of the cross and not immediately brandish insult to every strange depiction, said the bishop. The cross of Jesus is the strongest expression of the fact that love is ultimately stronger than all malice, stronger than hatred and retaliation. But the sight is of a man being ended on a gallows that must first be explained and believed. Don't be offended by stuff. It's your fault. It's all your fault. Now, they're not the only ones. Catholic Con is not the only ones documenting this horrifyingly bad bishop. Radical Catholic, an account on X you should consider following if you are there. He's actually in Europe. Sees the stuff. Get a front row seat to this stuff. It says Bishop Hermann Glettler of Innsbruck brought a sacrilegious crucified frog. The artist Christian Eisenberger was then invited to live with him in the rectory for 40 days. After which he performed a resurrection drama during which he covered himself with his own, we'll call them the male DNA component for begetting a child. What was he doing living with the bishop for 40 days? Somebody who would do something like that. Wonder if, he and Cardinal Tobin are part of the same sort of fraternity, we'll call it. Radical Catholic goes on, says Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI wrote about James Martin-type cliques being established in various seminaries. If you're wondering where the men who are participating in those cliques are today, you need look no further than Episcopal sees, such as in Innsbruck. He's got a citation there. He said, Bishop Glettler is the same man who allowed a Jesus clock made from an upside-down corpus with broken arms be installed in a church. The artist, Manfred Erjotz, also designed the transparent chasuble here modeled by none other than Glettler himself. Yes, a transparent chasuble being modeled by a bishop. This is what Glettler allowed and invited to be done to the Church of St. Anthea in the name of artistic expression. There he is holding a candle, looking super serious. And this is the man. By the way, for those who are curious, Radical Catholic put this on X back in 2019. He has been a known figure. Deacon Nick Donnelly chimed in on this debate. yesterday on X, saying, displaying a pig's heart in a condom in a church in mockery of the Sacred Heart is something you'd expect from the Temple of Satan. Bishop Hermann Glettler of the Diocese of Innsbruck installed the so-called Lenten cloth in the 18th century Innsbrucker Spitzka. Again, I don't speak German. Not one Austrian, German, or Vatican bishop has protested this desecration. Don't tell me the Novus Ordo is not a new religion. What was impossible before Vatican II is emblematic of the Novus Ordo's everyday desecration of the sacred. And he puts a picture of it there. This is very real. And we cannot be silent on this. So if you're one of those wondering, why is Anthony angry? Well, this is the stuff that makes me angry. This is desecration, and if this doesn't boil your blood, there's a problem. You should be praying for anybody involved in this decision-making process. Now, Cardinal Robert Prevost, before he became Pope Leo XIV, was not responsible in any way for this man becoming a bishop. That happened in 2017, or maybe earlier, before he took off that office. However, he will be 100% responsible for naming him the Archbishop of Vienna if he does that. And so, this is why that information was leaked from Germany or Austria. Wherever that decision was made, wherever the details came from, that is why it was made public. Because there are a lot of people in the church who've had enough. As you saw in the handling of the whole mess in Charlotte, this can be stopped. It does not have to happen. So what you should do, call it a call to action. Today, pray for Pope Leo XIV in your rosary. Pray that he makes the right decision in this and every other appointment, because so far the track record on that in 3 weeks has been terrible. Right out of central casting, you have a woman who looks like a James Martin type religious sister, if you catch my meaning, being placed as the second in command of the dicastery for religious to answer to another person who looks like, right out of central casting, a James Martin type religious sister, both of whom will be ordering male clergy around, which is an inversion of the order of things in the church. It's not supposed to be that way. It has never been that way, and theologically cannot be that way. And yet here we are, as well as a whole host of other bishops that are just awful. This is the track record, and it should stop right now. This is your call to action for that. Praying for him is an act of charity and love. It doesn't mean you can't be upset by this stuff. I don't know how anybody could see what Bishop Glettler has a track record of and see that his name is being considered for anything other than exile. That's what should happen to Bishop Glettler. He should be reduced to the lay state, invited to live out his life in a very strict monastery. We're talking, is it an order of Trappists, I think? Let me know in the comments if you know which order I'm talking about, who are functionally vegetarian, except on the highest of holy feast days. They live in silence. They spend all their time praying and doing the work necessary to keep their monastery going, but they live the most austere life, often in some of the worst environmental conditions imaginable, the coldest places or the hottest places. Let me know if you know which religious order I'm talking about. I want to say Trappists. I'm a specific brand of Trappist, but I don't know. But that's what should happen to him. Or he should be invited out of the church. Because you cannot tell me somebody who would do the things he did has the Catholic faith. There's no possible way. This isn't like some public figure who has, their own dirty laundry come out, their own personal sins, things to go to confession for, because that is merely a sinner like you and I have no idea what any one of you deal with in terms of the things that drive you to confession, and neither do you about anybody else in general. But this is something different. This is him advocating for evil and doing evil in public eye, and then saying you're the bad person for being upset with this. So do something proactive. Pray for the Holy Father that he make the right decision on this, and if need be, go and spread word about this. Talk about this on social media. And ask yourself this. Why is it that so few of the people who do what I do here with a camera and a microphone are willing to mention this or mention other things? Why is that? Things like this have to be stopped. And it's time that others join in. There are certain groups who people who are not, who that doesn't apply to. The Big Modernism blog came out of seemingly nowhere doing great work, cited almost every day. The Matt Gaspers has a new podcast. Marie Rundis over at Catholic Family News is doing great work. There's a lot of people doing good work, but a lot of people have gone silent. Nature abhors a void. And the people who step back run a very big risk of having the space they occupied filled by other people. It's a tragedy that people have gone silent. And it's time for the silence to stop. Regardless of some backroom deal may have been made to bring the Latin Mass back, we were all very good trads. Because at the end of the day, it's not the Mass. It's not. From ecclesiology, everything else flows. Ecclesiology is the theology of the mission of the church in the world, how the church sees herself and what its mission is. You look at what the ecclesiology is of after Vatican II, it's different than before. And then the words they use might have the same meaning, or might be the same words, but they have different meaning. So you have to find out what they mean by these things. And from there, you see everything else flow, including somehow people thinking that kind of artwork is fine, or the most horrifying liturgical errors being pushed and tolerated. All the weird stuff you saw out of Charlotte. Catherine Rickey says the church needs to reintroduce the old canonical book of penance. Such desecration deserves a great penance. Yes, Bishop Glettler's soul is on the line. Think about that. His soul is on the line, and he doesn't see it. It would be a tragedy. Antidog says that the Carthusians. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name. The Carthusians. That's what should happen. And I would bet you there's a Carthusian group out there like in Antarctica or something who'd be quite happy to have him. Jeslo says, I don't understand how people can't see. It's more of the same. Visit Casa Gandolfo, considering leaving St. Marta, singing investments, but the appointments are terrible and the homily synodal. Don't mistake outward appearances for everything else. You can use outward appearances to deceive. You can. I don't want that to be true. I want Pope Leo XIV to be Pope Leo XIII Part 2, where he will come out with anti-modernism encyclicals and the most beautiful Marian encyclicals and everything else. I desperately want that. That's not what we're seeing. So please pray, raise your voices on this, make noise. You don't, share this if you want to. I tend to be kind of a divisive figure when it comes to people either hate me or love what I do or somewhere in between. But generally, you can spread the information through the sources I share, which I'll be at returntotradition.org after this. Please make this known. This is a story that can't be allowed to happen. Glettler is literally one of the worst, most antichrist bishops in the church. It is that bad. You do not depict the Sacred Heart that way. You do not depict the crucifixion of our Lord in the way that he has. And then send that man to Vienna, which is a hotbed of the James Martin sin. Can you imagine if someone made James Martin the Archbishop of San Francisco? That's what we're talking about. Except James Martin is actually more restrained. Imagine if James Martin decided he just didn't care anymore and just lost any sense of self-restraint. That's what we're talking about. Chesterton just says, Leo XIII was pre-Vatican II. Yes, he was. But possibly one of my favorite popes. I have so many of his encyclicals on this channel, partially because he wrote like 88 of them. So there's a lot of them. I don't have all of them on the channel, but I have most of them. And I'm starting to rework through some of the more iconic ones slowly because they are so important. All right, folks. I'm curious what you think about this. Let me know in the comments, please. And like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. I am not here to make you angry at Bishop Glettler or Pope Leo XIV. That is not the point of what I'm doing. I'm asking you to pray for them and to do your Catholic duty to stop this from happening. That's it. And to maybe help shake some people out of their slumber who are deciding to remain silent while all this stuff happens. It has to stop. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning in. I want to thank the patrons and channel members who keep this work going. Your support is greatly appreciated. And for your patience in all the last 3 weeks of me going, recognizing seemingly what was going on and then deciding to step back and let things happen, which only lasted, a week and a half? Thanks for your patience. It is greatly appreciated. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.